All right, what is up, everybody? It is time for Seattle Seahawks video on this channel. If you are new to this channel, my name is Craig. Me and my buddy Chris started because we love the NFL. It's not our first channel. We have another one called Sports Talk Detroit. We are Lions fans. We don't hide that. We love to admit that. But at the same time, we love covering teams that the national media seems to ignore. You know the Seahawks fall into that. And you get some local news where you are, but rarely are the Seahawks on ESPN. Rarely are they on NFL Network. And so, I mean, being talked about. It's just like a constant cowboy show, right? Or the NFC East. And if they do talk about the NFC West, it's the Rams or it's the 49ers. Really frustrating. But anyways, we want to show some love to the little guy because we have felt like the little guy for a long time, even though it hasn't been that way recently. And I'm here to tell you about a recent move that just keeps getting better. So in this video, we are going to talk about, for a second, DK Metcalf. I know he's not on your team anymore, but a former wide receiver from your team talked about him a little bit. So we're gonna address that for a second, and then we are going to talk about what is going to make this offense special this year and how this team got a ton better while saving money. Maybe not a ton better. I think your wide receiver room got better while saving money. All right? And that's not a lock on Lockett. We will never knock Lockett on this show. All right? Really, really respect what that man has done as a player, just in general, just super, super impressive. And honestly, we're not going to hit DK Metcalf too hard on this either. But a former Seahawks wide receiver, some of you may remember Brian Walters. He never played with DK Metcalf, right? But he has remained a fairly good observer of what makes a wide receiver good and what makes one great. And he was on the Brock and Salk show on Seattle Sports Radio, see, local radio, right? And Walters spoke for many when he said Metcalf was slightly overrated, all right? It says mini 12s. We know what that means. That's your fans, right? You're the 12 man. So Walters said, maybe I'll be a little nice, I guess, but slightly overrated. In other words, he was going to say he's just flat overrated. I think he's going to do well in Pittsburgh, but at the same time, I just think they really revamped this wide receiver room to fit what Kubiak's scheme and a lot of guys that are better route runners and guys that just kind of complement each other. All right, let's talk about DK Metcalf. Just for a quick second, and then I'm going to get into what the wide receiver room is now and talk to you about why this move that you made just keeps getting better. All right? And I just truly feel that it does. So, you traded DK Metcalf to the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right? In that, you got a second rounder back. So, just remember that for a second, right? But let's talk about DK Metcalf. When we played you last year, he was a matchup problem. For us, we play almost solely, the Lions play almost solely man coverage, as much as any team in the NFL. And Carlton Davis was not a match for him. He was overpowering. He was too fast. He was too strong. And when I see DK Metcalf and I see his physical abilities, you know who I'm going to tell you he reminds me of. You know who I'm going to tell you he reminds me of. He reminds me of Calvin Johnson. He does, but he never produced like Calvin Johnson. Sure, he's putting up about 1,000 yards every single season, but then he goes out and gets like $30 million a year. He's not a $30 million a year wide receiver because he's not multiple enough to be a $30 million a year wide receiver. He just isn't. So when I look at this, I say you get a second-round pick back. All right, you get a second-round pick back. Then you go out and you make some moves with the $30 million that you saved because you would have had to pay the man. So let's go ahead and take a look at your wide receiver room. So you went from Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and JSN. And you say, all right, JSN has shown to be the guy. He has proven that now he's probably our best wide receiver. Lockett is getting older. DK Metcalf is going to continue being what he is, not worth $30 million. So we're going to keep Jackson Smith and Jigba, and that's exactly what you did. Then you went out and you signed Cooper Kupp at a better deal. Yes, I understand there's injury issues, and we don't know how much he's got left in the tank. But if he can find that fountain of youth a little bit, or at least find an ankle specialist, for crying out loud, stop spraining ankles, then he might be, if he comes back to just being kind of what he was when he's on the field, he's a great wide receiver. It's simple. And then you go out and you get MVS, Marquez ValdesScantling. And I want to talk about exactly when the former wide receiver, Brian Walters, was talking about how he gets guys that fit his system, better route runners. Would you say Jackson Smith-Njigba is a good route runner? Yeah, obviously. Would you say Cooper Kupp is a good route runner? The dude is an absolute technician out there. He is a technician. What about Marquez ValdesScantling? Is he a good route runner? No, but he's a deep threat. I'm going to show you something here. This is kind of unique, all right? Last year, it says Bills and Saints. He played the first half of the season with the Bills. He had 2 catches for 26 yards. Okay. He then went to the Saints, played 8 games with the Saints. 8 games with the Saints. Let's look at this. All right. In those 8 games with the Saints, he had 385 yards in 8 games. That's almost 50 yards a game. All right. As a third wide receiver. All right. And he went off in his second game, 3 catches, 2 touchdowns. But when you look at this, when you look at the receptions, it's 1, 3, 2, 2, 4, 2, 3. You allow Kupp and you allow Smith-Njigba to do the underneath stuff. You just got a new tight end, didn't you? A little bit of a matchup issue. Yeah, he is. Royo. All right. Now you just let MVS come in there and run deep routes. And I'm not saying this is John Madden football, all right, where you just come in and run deep routes, but I do want to extrapolate something. Because last year when he went to the Saints, he played for Kubiak. Kubiak is clearly the one who said, I want him in Seattle. If you extrapolate the stats that MVS had with who as a quarterback, exactly no one. That turns into, over the course of a 17-game season, I understand it's a small sample size, and he probably won't get here, but it turns into 37 catches. That 385 yards turns into 818 yards and 8.5 touchdowns. Obviously, you can't get a half a touchdown, but you get what I'm saying. So, would you, from your third wide receiver this year, MVS, would you take 40 catches for 800 yards and 8 touchdowns? I would. I know I sure would. You figure Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to have 120 of them, right? 120 grabs, maybe 100. Maybe Cooper Kupp gets 100 if he stays healthy. And all of a sudden, you're like, man, this is a pretty darn good receiving core. And you have upgraded, and you got a second-round pick for your troubles when you got rid of DK Metcalf, and you saved a ton of money on the salary cap. Good move? I think it absolutely is. It keeps getting better, and it's kind of fun now to sit back. We're not sitting in the moment, right? We're not sitting in that moment of the draft. We're not sitting in the moment of the NBA free agency. We're not sitting in the moment of the trade, but now we're sitting here. It's the end of May, and we're looking back, and we're thinking about, actually, I kind of get what they did there, and I kind of like what they did. I'm going to go one further for you. Let's look at people who come from this Kubiak, Shanahan, McVay tree. All right? First, you have Shanahan, right? You've got Kyle Shanahan. The 49ers. When you look at all these offenses that are under this Kubiak offensive tree, do any of them have these massive, big wide receivers? Kyle Shanahan, right? No, I mean, Debo, yeah, an underneath guy. They just let him go, by the way. But they just traded him for peanuts, right? Because he had one good year. I don't want to dish Debo like that. And I know we don't have any Debo lovers, and I know Debo's done some things to the Seahawks, but if you really look back at it, it was one ridiculous year, right? But not big-bodied wide receivers. Mike McDaniel with the Dolphins. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. Little route runners, fast. Matt LaFleur with the Green Bay Packers. Same deal. Same deal. Small receivers, not necessarily small, but not DK Metcalf. I know he's one of a kind that are just technicians with route runners. Kevin O'Connell with the Vikings. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, technicians when it comes to route running. And now that is what you have. That is what you have in Seattle. You have technicians with route running that fit the system. All right. Thanks for watching. If you want more, please hit that subscribe button. That would help us out a ton. It'll let you know when new videos are coming out. Hope you enjoy it. We'll see you on the next one.